Well, good afternoon, and I want to welcome everybody back to the Iowa State Capitol. Today we're here to stand united as Iowans and as Americans, united in grief and anger over the unsettling and criminal act of violence that robbed George Floyd of his rights and his life on a street in Minneapolis. United in solidarity with those who exercise their right to demand swift justice and to take a stand against injustice through peaceful protest. And united as one community, saying in unison that violence is not the aim, and that we will protect and defend the safety of our people, answer to this or any businesses and communities. This past weekend, here on these steps, and again throughout the East Village in Des Moines, thousands of Iowans showed up to stand united in peaceful protest. And that happened in a number of Iowa cities. Hundreds of people peacefully gathered in Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Waterloo, Sioux City, Council Bluffs, and others. Their message was powerful. Their voices were heard. But the lawless acts of a few hijacked that message and endangered the lives of other ones. That's been a pattern now that's occurred over several days, and it's a pattern that must end. I appreciate the actions taken by local leaders in Polk County, Scott County, and Council Bluffs in declaring a curfew to help de-escalate potential violence. Last night in Scott County, a Davenport police officer was shot and injured while on duty, and this violence is unacceptable. Our thoughts and prayers are with this officer, his family, and the people of Davenport as they experience these horrible tragedies. I've spoken with Davenport Mayor Mike Mattson and offered the full support of the state. Throughout the weekend, I've also been in contact with Adjutant General Correll of the Iowa National Guard and Public Safety Commissioner Baines to discuss the National Guard's role in assisting state and local law enforcement. Under my order, they stand ready to assist and support when and if that time occurs. I've also had conversation with a number of mayors from across the state to discuss their efforts, all to facilitate peaceful protest in their communities and ask if there is any needs that the state can meet. I've been so impressed with the coordination between local, county, and state law enforcement and officials in responding to these kinds of public safety issues. Here in Des Moines, I want to take this opportunity to thank a number of law enforcement agencies, the Des Moines Police Department, Polk County Sheriff's Office, and the Iowa State Patrol for their swift response, purposeful restraint, and commitment to cooperation with the communities they serve. These are not the things they do just in responding to the current situation. They do it as a matter of course. I want to recognize Des Moines Police Chief Dana Wingert for his focus on community policing and building strong relationships with the communities his department protects. We also had so many leaders from Iowa's African American community, Representative K.O. Abdul Samad, Bishop Ron Woods, and Isaiah Knox from Urban Dreams. This is just a few, but they were on the front lines of the protests every day throughout the night to help de-escalate and convince our young people that violence is not the answer to their outrage and anger. There are also amazing community leaders like Betty Andrews, the president of the Iowa-Nebraska AANCP, who have been working closely with us as part of the Governor's Focus Committee to address longstanding issues and inequities in our criminal justice system. As the Governor, I want all Iowans to know that I hear you. I hear your frustration, and I am committed to listening and having a respectful dialogue about what we need to address the injustices that are felt by so many. And that might mean having some very uncomfortable and eye-opening discussions. But they're discussions that we must have if we're going to bring about positive and impactful change. One of the most lasting images of this weekend happened last night in front of the Des Moines Police Department. As the curfew for Polk County approached, As the curfew for Polk County approached, law enforcement officers knelt alongside protesters their neighbors in a show of support and understanding. It was made possible because of a police chief and his team and community leaders who have built bridges and could talk to each other. That moment was a powerful and momentous display of understanding, and I'm confident that as Iowans we can repeat it and move forward together as one united community and state. So it's now my pleasure to introduce Frank County, the mayor of Des Moines, and I am so grateful for his leadership during this very trying time for the city of Des Moines. Mayor?
Pick this up just a little bit. Maybe you can hear me a little better. And Chief, I don't want my hat to blow away, so I gotta save it here. But Governor, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and be part of this today. I have had the privilege of being the mayor of the city of Des Moines, but most importantly, and I can't forget it, that I was born here and I've called Des Moines my home my entire life. And that is why it has been so painful for me to see what we've gone through the past 72 hours. When a peaceful gathering turned violent, lives were at risk and property was damaged. The raw emotions facing Des Moines surrounding the death of George Floyd are understandable. It was a horrific event and unacceptable. We can't undo what happened, but we can have an impact on how we move forward as a city together. I was at the Union Park vigil last night. It was a beautiful event with hundreds of people there. All ages, all faces, all genders. We gathered on a beautiful Iowa spring evening to reflect, to listen, to learn. The message that was clear because the voices were powerful. They talked of unity, justice, and equity. That's the experience that we must copy to move forward toward the next few days, the next few years. Those are the words that should resonate with us because those are the actions that will give us hope. In closing, I want to thank the Des Moines Police Department for their heroic efforts over the past 3 nights, their professionalism that was on display and beyond reproach. I also would like to thank the men and women from other law enforcement agencies that arrived on the streets and provided us with assistance. And thanks to you, Governor Reynolds, for your staff and your unwavering support in this. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Representative also Abdul Samad. Akeo was there. Thank you. And many of our other community leaders that have been out there and on the streets night and day. I'm sure they're bone weary. They'd like to be home getting a little rest, but they were taking on the protesters and easing tensions between everybody and making a difference. Des Moines and I are so grateful for everything that you have done. Thank you so much, and for all the leaders that have stepped up. And for that, let me turn it over to Akeo. Thank you.
First and foremost, I want to give honor to God. Secondly, I would put on my shield, but it's not like the shields you have, Chief. This one blows away, okay? Let me thank the governor for convening meetings, the mayor, the chief, the individuals that you see standing here, Isaiah Knox, Betty Andrews, also Reverend Rob Johnson, who's over there, and the individuals that from the community that came down Bishop Woods, and several others. But let me also thank the protesters that came out, that was able to educate us, the peaceful protesters that came with a mission, that came to talk about justice. And I just want to surely tell you what touched my heart and brought tears to my eyes. There were several times, but a young man, as Al Wambo and I were standing there, he came up to me and he said, "We just want people to listen to us. We don't want people to hear what we have to say. We want people to hear our pain." And as an African-American male, I understand that pain. I understand where he was saying, and it just wasn't children. It was young adults and adults, but the pain is there because I stood there, I was in the same pain. But we had two different levels of how to deal with our pain. And as we talked to the young people and gave them mics to talk, this young man looked at me in my eye and he said, "Mr. Hale, when I was a child, Dr. King was shot and nothing changed." He says, "As I began to grow up, I grew up and I saw a 12-year-old young Rice shot down." He said, "As I went in and I also saw a Michael Gardner, and then I saw another young man in Missouri was killed and nothing was done. And then it took a few days when we saw George Floyd." He said, "I'm angry." Because he said, "How old are you?" And I told him, "I'm 68. He said, "I'm under 30. Why are we going through what you were fighting for all this time and we're going through the same thing?" And tears began to well up in my eyes because his pain came through. And I told him, my answer to him was that it's a process, but this gives us an opportunity to look at everything that has been compounded to this point, to now look for systemic change, to look for systemic solutions, and to develop a process. But now's the time for you to come to the table. Us as leaders have to bring these young people now and young adults to the table so that the next press conference that we hold in a month or so, you see some of those young adults sitting here addressing you and saying, "We're going to work a process." But as I go and step back, I also want to say to you that 95% of those individuals, as we support civic engagement, were peaceful. They had a voice that they wanted to say. We have less than 3% of individuals that had a different message, and they hijacked the message that these young people had because their motive was to cause disruption and destroy and disturbance. And if it wasn't for the relationships that we have built with the Des Moines Police Department, they might have been successful. This could have been a worse situation. But because of the work that we've done with the police department, with the governor's office, with different organizations, we didn't allow them to hijack it. We knew we had to step in so these young people's message could get across. But these individuals who hijacked it, a message has to be sent to them. We are all in this together. And we're not going to let you hijack our babies. We're not letting you hijack our message. And that you need to take that out of Iowa because Iowans have come together to stand together and make sure that you can't hijack what we have. And there's only about 5 to 10 of those individuals that did that hijacking. But as you report the news, understand we have some good kids, good young adults, and we have a coalition working together to make sure we get the work done. Because Iowans, we all are in this together, and we're going to start having some real conversations to make it a reality. Iowa Nice is not going to be a buzz term. We're going to make it a reality. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Betty Andrews, president of the Iowa-Nebraska NAACP, and I'm grateful to be here to speak with you just for a little time. I am thankful to the governor for convening a table that includes law enforcement officials, government officials, and leaders from the African American community. And we are at a specific moment in time right here now. COVID-19 has taken back the covers off of many disparities that we have seen in the African American community, in many communities of color. COVID-19 has revealed the challenges and put the spotlight on those challenges. But that's not the only pandemic that we are dealing with. We are dealing with a legacy of oppression, a proverbial knee that America has on the neck of the African American community. And we understand that there is pain, there is hurt, there is frustration. I'm there, I'm Black, and I share that pain and frustration. And we also acknowledge, as have all of our officials, that this is a perfect time to protest and to raise awareness around these issues. We don't want George Floyd to die in vain. We don't want Breonna Taylor to die in vain. We want justice. And in that justice, we want the opportunity to peacefully protest. And as we're protesting and sharing our hurt and making sure that our voice is heard, and it's important that our voice is heard, because you often hear people say Black Lives Matter. And when you see that, you hear people say Black Lives Matter over and over again. Why are they saying that? Because they need to be heard. They want to be heard. And so what you're seeing right now is simply an opportunity to take a microphone and make sure that they are heard. But we also invite people, as they are in this process, to join with the NAACP and many other organizations, join with us as we work with our officials to bring change, to go from protest and bring alongside with that policy. Because we need to change the core. We need to address this legacy that started with America's greatest sin, racism, slavery, and all of its babies that have come since. We need to do that, but we need to do that in a way that is strategic. So we must protest insistently and peacefully. We must press, and also we must use our voice to vote. We have the opportunity on June 2nd to have a huge protest to make sure that we are walking to the polls and making sure that our voice is heard. So we need to go and we need to include protests, but let's not stop there. Let's go to policy, and then we will have power. Thank you.
With that, I think we'll open it up for questions.
What steps are you all taking to ensure press aren't arrested covering these protests?
To make sure press, Mayor, do you want to address that? I don't think that is ever the intent, but we'll let the mayor.
What was the question?
Press.
Question was around the press being arrested?
Yes, sir.
Is that it? I think that when we're in the throes of a riot, sometimes, law enforcement looks at a situation and wants to keep everybody safe. And as we're trying to move people away, sometimes it's hard to separate, the press from others when there's rioting going on, glass being broken, and people's health and safety at risk. And so I believe that the unfortunate situation that you're talking about, if you're talking about what happened here in Des Moines, we had a reporter that was in the midst of it. We can't check all the credentials of everybody to see who they are or what they are. The point is, are they obeying the orders of our public safety officials? And, you know, how do we get everybody out of harm's way and make the right thing happen? So for me, we apologize that the individual fell into the group that was arrested, but hopefully everybody understands the fear of our law enforcement. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We want people to get out of the way when bad things are happening, and needs to continue. So I think that's my response. I don't know if the chief has anything else. Okay, thanks.
You don't want people to get hurt, but we also had a photographer get shot with a rubber bullet.
Yeah, well, that is not the intent. You know what? There are distractors that are here to really cause chaos and take advantage of a horrific situation. And as you have heard every one of the speakers identify, the majority are peaceful protesters that have a powerful message, and we're trying to do everything we can to give them the opportunity to be heard. But when you have distractors and individuals, small number, come in, they can really cause some chaos and incite horrific things happening as well, cause impact to individuals being hurt, cause devastation to our communities and to our buildings and to our businesses and to people. And so they are trying to balance all of that in the midst of some very unprecedented situations. So their intent is to make sure that we can maintain peaceful protests, and we are across the state and across the country. But that doesn't mean we're going to stand down and let a few come in and destroy and cause harm to Iowans and to our communities.
President Trump today told governors that they weren't using enough force, that they were being too soft on the protesters. Do you agree with those statements, and how do you characterize that?
Well, Kathy, I wasn't on that call because I'm focused on what I can do in Iowa. I'm focused on working with the people that are standing behind me, that are working around the clock to make sure that Iowans' voices are heard, that these injustices stop. I was actually on the phone calling mayors across the state to thank them for what they're doing to facilitate peaceful protests and demonstrations in their communities, to make sure that they didn't need anything else from the state. Was there anything that we could do to help identify those few that are coming in to hijack the message that is trying to be delivered? And so we all have a responsibility. I think you all know right now words matter. We have to really be thoughtful about how we move forward, and that's where I'm working. That's where I'm focusing my energy on.
Governor, your Second Chance Initiatives Phase 2 was looking at injustices and inequalities within the criminal justice system. In light of all of this, should that be accelerated? I know some Democratic lawmakers have asked for maybe some policy to be put forward this session, not wait.
You might be looking at one of them guys right over there, and that's why we met on Saturday. We met on Sunday. We're meeting again this week. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for chairing the Governor's Focus Committee on Criminal Justice Reform. He's led it. I was proud of the efforts that they were able to do in a relatively short time frame this last legislative session. So we're going to, COVID kind of impacted a lot of the initiatives that we were working on, but it is our intent to get that ramped. Betty, you asked about it yesterday or today. I've lost track of time, when we're going to schedule that next meeting and get that going. And then we'll have probably another, you heard Akeo talk about our young people and getting them to the table and listening and hearing and understanding. So we've got some ideas about what that looks like and how we move forward, and we're kind of formulating that right now. It'll probably fold into what we're doing with the Governor's Focus Committee. It's certainly will be a big piece of it.
Seem to help last night with curbing some of the destruction?
I feel like it did. I feel like it just de-escalated. Some of it, at the protest, I think it was at Union Park, was at yesterday. We've seen so many peaceful protests that took place, the one downtown. It's just when it starts to get dark and you've got your distractors, your crew that come in and try to escalate and take advantage of, a large group of people, and then it gets harder to control. And so our goal was to try to allow Iowans to have the opportunity to have that protest. But if we could start to, implement that curfew, and you see more communities and counties across the state that are doing that until we can kind of get things settled down and then really start to to move forward with that. So I feel that it did. Mayor, I don't know, do you have anything to add to that? I don't want to do all the talking.
The only thing I can say to follow up on what the governor said, the vigil that took place last night at Union Park was so moving, and the words that came out in the pain in the 9 minutes of kneeling that everybody partook in to understand and really impactfully show the community that we're all in this together. Everybody has a different point of view for sure, but you know, as I said earlier, it was people of all race, all color, all gender, all of us listening together, thinking together, looking to a stronger future, and trying to find ways that we can work together to build that. So listen, just like the governor said, we look forward to those opportunities to exchange ideas and move our community and our state forward.
For one of the community members of, oh sorry, did you, go ahead if you want.
Saying that the curfew goes too far. Do any of you have any thoughts about how long this curfew might last at this level and what changes might be in store?
Reka, I'll let the officials answer that question, but I did want to touch on, I believe it was Kathy's question, around legislation and ordinance proposals. And so I wanted to acknowledge that the NAACP for several years has been working on anti-racial profiling legislation at the State House, and then also here locally, we are currently in a negotiation with the city of Des Moines, along with other groups, to talk about, or not to talk about, to pass an ordinance. And we have now put forth amendments to that ordinance from the community side. And so this is, you know, we're talking about taking things from from protest to policy, and we're definitely talking to those who want to hear their voice. We also want to make sure that we take it from protest to policy with our officials, so with our legislators and with our city council people. Now is the time to do that. So absolutely, there are some things that we can put in place right now. The focus group that the governor has appointed, and I appreciate it, and I'm a proud member of it, has made several changes, and we are glad to see that. And just know that now is the time to take another look and re-examine and see what we can make happen in terms of change in the area of not only criminal justice, but all of the systems that we have within our government. Thank you.
You know, and I believe, you know, we want to do this in as short a time frame as possible. It just allows us to get in front of it and really de-escalate and maintain the few that want to come in here and just really cause harm and damage. You know, you don't come to a peaceful protest with bricks and hammers in your backpack, and you don't come with smoke bombs and cocktail, or whatever those things are called, the bombs. I mean, I don't even know what they are. So you don't come to a peaceful protest with that in mind. And so until we can get figured out who's doing that, get it identified, and really do everything we can to give Iowans the opportunity to peacefully protest, that's our goal. And the sooner that we can get that lifted, nobody wanted to do that. You know, it was not an easy discussion. We probably sat for 2 hours trying to figure out how we do it and how we do it in a respectful manner. And so, you know, it wasn't something that we came to the table wanting to do. It was something we felt that was necessary to control the violence and the looting that we heard was about to take place across this state. And that is unacceptable. And we're not going to allow that to happen, because what happens when that happens is Iowans get hurt and people get, you know, they're put in danger. And so that's the reason that it was implemented, and we hope it's for a short time frame.
Talk about what you all have talked about, that it's such a small minority of the folks who've shown up to protest who have done anything violent, the looting, all that kind of stuff. But there were some people who talked to us last night who said their level of frustration has reached such a high point that they feel like those actions are really the only way to draw attention to this. So what do you say to those folks who believe that?
Thanks for the question, and obviously we hear that on the front line as well. And what we're trying to teach people, and the protesters have every right to protest, and we need it to be peaceful, and we need to understand that it's going to take time and we're willing to allow the time for the protest to occur, but eventually we do have to get to some kind of policy change. And we know this is a systemic thing that needs to be changed, and it's not going to be quick or easy, and it's going to be hard. And I do want to say that I am so proud of the group of people, and I've spent more time at the Capitol than I've spent hours and hours and hours in the governor's office really trying to get things done with this team and others. And I want to also say thank you to the police department for allowing us to have the relationship to move back and forth. And we've actually been on the front lines when things have happened. There was a situation that happened last night with a fight in the crowd, and I know everybody's watching this stuff live stream. And while it occurred, we even we were with the chiefs and said, we shouldn't have the police knew they probably shouldn't have handled it that way. Next time now, because we were there to be able to talk about that on the ground level, on the front line, we can make this better and we can make this peaceful. And we are literally every single day, every hour of these last 3 days working on situations like that. But one message I do want to say to everyone is that the rhetoric is often that just a few police officers, a few bad apples in the police department cause all this issue. Well, remember, and to give those police officers that don't cause these issues grace, we'll do the same for the protesters, because literally there are just a few protesters out there that are causing grief, but 95%, and literally we're out there every single day, all night. We haven't been home before 2 o'clock in the morning this week, the last 3 days, that when we are sitting there having real conversations with the protesters, and they want to be heard. They want to be heard. They sat in a circle for an hour, and we just listened. And eventually we'll get there, but we all have to do it together, and it's going to take a long time. Did that answer your question? Thanks.
We're going to take 2 more questions, by the way.
You bet.
Dave, we also want to say to those and to the community, to the parents, to the protesters, to the individuals that are up here and we're together, we all realize that this system is not perfect. We all realize that there's part of the system that is broke. Not cracked, but broke. And we're now talking and asking individuals to help us to mend the broken part of this system. You know, we have to look at, especially from criminal justice, we have to look at the fact that we're about 3% of African Americans in the population of Iowa, and we're almost 20 to 30% in the penitentiary. That system's broke. We have to realize that. We look at it in this country that we have disparities with the death, you know, in health, in education, when it comes to people of color, when it comes to disability, when it comes to women, we have a system that's broke. But we have to get together and have real conversation, and that's what we've been able to do now with the individuals, the governor's office, the police department, with the highway patrol, with everybody. They'll say, we're going to work on this system, and we're not going to do it cosmetically. We're not going to do it just to have fluff. We're going to actually put some substance in it. Because I think what I've learned dealing with these distinguished individuals here, the differences that we have. And once I accepted the differences that we have, you know, then the similarities now have substance. Now we can work together and have some real conversation. In fact, and I go back, Chief Winger and I were talking last night, and we're talking about starting to meet quarterly, not just with us, but with some of the protesters, so that we can hear and what's going on. But not only that, the chief said we got to also quit meeting in these circumstances, because we got to quit meeting when there's a crisis. So we're actually going to have a barbecue. And I don't eat meat, so he's got to buy a lot of fish to make sure that we have a good barbecue. But the thing is, understand, last night, with the individuals that were standing up for justice, with the police department, with the workers that were there, the community people, at points we laughed just to keep from crying. But we knew that we had a system we had to work with. Asking you, parents, corporate leaders, individuals that want to change, elected officials, let's work together to get it done. And to the media, Let's work together to get it done. And to getting hit with the rubber bullets, got grazed here with the police. They weren't aiming. They were trying to save some of the young kids from getting caught up with those who was breaking windows. And we were moving them, but then the ones that were breaking the windows started throwing rocks and bricks because, yeah, I got hit by a rubber bullet, but I also got hit with a brick here from one of those individuals that threw the brick. That didn't stop us. We still stayed there. So when you're in the middle and you're trying to report or you're trying to help, you got to understand what's at stake. And if you're doing it out of your heart, then you know you just got to keep on pushing. Thank you.
For 2 more questions.
Governor.
Hey, Governor. Real quick, can you, first of all, thank you for convening this and thank you for having this. And we've heard you talk about how looting is wrong, but with that same passion, what do you say to the people who are really hurt? To the people who feel like nothing has been done yet? What's your message to them?
Yeah, my message is to them is I know they have been hurt. I know they have a powerful message. We have to do a better job of hearing it. That's what we've talked about through this whole weekend, to give them the opportunity. But it's not just to be heard. It can't stop there, to Betty's point, to AKO's point. We have to implement systemic change. We have to change the way that we are doing things, and we can. There is a good foundation that has been built, and the people that are up here have helped create that. And we want to be a part of that. We want to help drive that. And I said it in my remarks, it's going to be uncomfortable. I've not walked in your shoes. I don't know what you've experienced. Help me understand what you've experienced and what we're doing wrong so that we can get rid of those injustices and continue to lift up everybody and give everybody the chance to be successful. This is a land of opportunity, and we need everybody to be able to have that same opportunity. So I need to be there. I need to listen. I'm willing to do it. We're going to figure out a way to facilitate that, and we're going to get it done.
A lot about listening to people's concerns. Solutions to some of these issues have been proposed for several years already. Betty Andrews mentioned the racial profiling proposal in the legislature that hasn't passed. Do you think these protests are enough to really be a catalyst to get these things done, or is it just going to be more conversations?
No, I didn't say it can't. If you just heard me say, I said it's not just about listening. It's about then taking action, but making sure that it's impactful action, that it's actually making a difference, that it's not just change for the sake of change, that we have a purpose and we have a meaning around what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. You know, we established the focus group. We've been working hard to start to address some of the injustices. My God, we are just getting started. We've scratched the surface. We've made some positive step forwards. That should help build the momentum. But we are just getting started. And I think one of the areas that Betty talked about is I think that's one of the top priorities that you're actually addressing, was focused in this next, whatever this next legislative session looks like, over the interim with the focus group going forward. So, you know, I mean, we're committed. This group is committed. One person can't do it. They're going to help me facilitate that and help me figure out how we move forward and implement policy or do whatever we need to do to make those changes impactful. Thank you.